Good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Free-for-All Friday edition of the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. This is episode 857. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is August 4th, year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're a hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. And I can't believe it's Friday already. This week went by fast. It really did. I had a good show set up for you today, and I want to thank Dave for letting me know I had some technical difficulties going on there. And let's just get right to the business at hand. If you like what you hear on the Dan Clements Show, go over and support one of my affiliate marketers. And the affiliate marketer today is GearXS.com. And they have a mega Friday sale going on today over there. And they have all sorts of things that they're actually selling over there. Let me get back over. Sorry about that. I had shut that off. They have a garden depot wall holder with hooks for your garden tools and stuff. They have a portable hammock with a carry bag. They have men's 2XL 100% boxer briefs on sale. They have pepper and salt mills on sale. They have this vintage baseball pinball game. It's made of wood and wooden cardboard, it looks like, and it's on sale over there. And it brings back fond memories of my childhood. So if you like what you hear on the show and you want to contribute, but you don't have any money, but you shop, this is an easy way to do it. Doesn't cost you anything. Go to the danclementshow.com and click on the Gear XS widget over there. Today's daily Bible reading comes out of Philippians chapter 4, verses 2 through 5. I implore Eudora and I implore Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. And I urge you also, true companion, help these women who labored with me in the gospel, with Clement also. There's a neat dude there. And the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to all men. The Lord is at hand. And I just wanted to point that out. I love that verse 4. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. And that he had to be a dashingly handsome gentleman named Clement. It had to be. So that's the daily Bible verse today. The quote meal today comes from Oswald Chambers. Today, Jesus is being dispatched as a figurehead of a religion, a mere example. He is that, but he is infinitely more. He is salvation itself. He is the gospel of God. He is more than just a figurehead, and too many folks out there take Jesus for granted, or they just don't take him at all. Today's short Bible lesson, and this is a good one because this comes up quite a bit, and I'm really surprised at how this really comes up in conversation. Does Mark 16:16 belong in the Bible? Now, this is by Alan Webster over at housetohouse.com, and he does a good job explaining how some of the older manuscripts actually have Mark 16:16 in it, and some of the newer ones don't. And he does a good job explaining that, and it comes up more times than you'd think. Especially when you go over and quote Mark 16:16 to folks when you are actually in a Bible study, and it does make a difference. 16:16 through the end of the chapter usually is not included in, or parts of that chapter, chapter 16 is not included in there. He said, and basically all it is, Mark is saying here, he who believes and is baptized is saved, he who believes not will be condemned. And that's usually, you have a footnote to bottom of your Bible saying that verse and some of the following isn't in older manuscripts, but actually it is in some of the oldest manuscripts. And there's nothing unbiblical or nothing about that verse would tend to want somebody to remove it from the canon of scriptures, because it's supported by other scriptures in the Gospels, especially the Gospels. But he who believes and is baptized will be saved, but he who does not believe will be condemned. And to me, that's pretty straightforward as far as biblical stuff there. All right. As I was talking about yesterday, I'm going to get into this about Patreon. We didn't have time to do that yesterday, and I just want to get in on Patreon and talk about this a little bit. Matter of fact, I found the video, or I knew where it's at. I just didn't have time yesterday, but I'm gonna play it today. Patreon CEO Jack Conte, he did a video and he explains why they suspended Lauren Sutherland's YouTube account. And it's pretty clear to me, you know, she did violate their terms of service, and Patreon's a company, they set these things up. However, he did apologize because they didn't have a rebuttal, you know, something that a creator can come back and rebut the accusations and appeal. There's not an appeal process, there's not a warning process in line. And he said that, and you know, I forgot to put the Ryan report. He did a long, I'll make sure I get that into the show notes today. He did over 1 hour, like a 1 hour, 10 minutes or something, interview with Jack Conte and talked all about this. So I'm confident after seeing that and after seeing this video, I'm a little bit more confident in Patreon and their vision and what they want to do. They're not willy-nilly going through and taking down patrons' accounts or creators' accounts over on Patreon. It's just not doing that. And this is important to understand. So let me get this set up here. I always like to put the fair use up here before we get into anything. So, all right. Well, here's the video of the Patreon video with Jack Conte and his explanation of everything.
Hi everyone, so I want to do something a little unusual and make a video outlining Patreon's reasoning for taking down a creator's page. I found that tech companies are usually pretty disengaged from their communities when it comes to content policy and discussing takedowns. I've always wished that tech companies would just tell folks what the heck is going on. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I just want to say that there are trade-offs of the transparency that you're about to hear from me and from Patreon. A ton of people are going to be angry about this video. A lot of people are just going to try and find holes in our logic. We're going to start a conversation that a lot of tech companies would just want to completely avoid. But we're putting all that stuff aside for now because at this point in time, it's much more important to explain to creators why we do what we do. So to recap, Patreon recently took down the pages of all the members of Defend Europe, including Lauren Sutherland's page, and we also took down the IGD news page as well. Some people are really upset about this. Some people have even accused Patreon of making decisions based on political ideology, so I'd like to clear all that up right now. Content policy and the decision to remove a creator page has absolutely nothing to do with politics and ideology and has everything to do with a concept called manifest observable behavior. The purpose of using manifest observable behavior is to remove personal values and beliefs when the team is reviewing content. It's a review method that's entirely based on observable facts. What has a camera seen? What has an audio device recorded? It doesn't matter what your intentions are, your motivations, who you are, your identity, your ideology. The trust and safety team only looks at manifest observable behavior. We get rigorous and specific because we're talking about removing a person's income. The authority to take away a human being's income is a sobering responsibility. It is not something to be done on a whim, and as a creator myself, I've had videos taken down. I always want Patreon to put creators first. The reason Patreon exists is to give creators power and income, to give creators a voice, a seat at the table. We're super creator first in everything we do. Like, we give creators their patrons' email addresses. Can you imagine if Facebook or YouTube gave you your fans' email addresses? It just doesn't happen. And we don't just say that, we do it. It's our culture. It's how we operate. It's in every line of code and every product that we build and every decision that we make at the company. So along those lines, the purpose of this video is not to bash Lauren or any other creator. She herself was upset that we didn't give her the evidence that we used to make this decision.
That should take some pretty incredible evidence behind it, shouldn't it? But what did you provide as evidence? Absolutely nothing.
So the purpose of this video is to just clarify that confusion, offer up that evidence, and explain to our creator community how we make these sorts of big decisions. So here we go. Here's how we made the decision to remove the pages of the members of Defend Europe. From a high level, we removed their pages because they directly obstructed a search and rescue ship in the Mediterranean. And they made a variety of statements and outlined plans to obstruct similar rescue ships in the future. And that's a violation of a section of our content policy that prohibits creators from threatening to take or from taking action that could lead to harm or loss of life. In a video that she made after Patreon removed her page, Lauren says that she was not involved in Defend Europe's mission.
I assume that you guys are talking about the Defend Europe mission, a mission that firstly, I am not actually taking part in.
Questions like, is Lauren Southern an activist or is she a journalist? Is she a member of Defend Europe or is she not a member of Defend Europe? Those sorts of binary questions, it turns out they just matter less than manifest observable behavior. You can't use manifest observable behavior to say who someone is. That's just a more nebulous claim. You can use manifest observable behavior to say what someone did or didn't do and whether or not those things are or are not against your content policy.
I was planning on joining them on the boat initially just to record everything.
She said she was just on the boat to record the experience, and we don't believe that. Here's a clip of her on a boat telling the boat operator where to go to cut off an NGO vessel.
Quick, get in front, Thomas.
In front of the boat.
Yes, in front of the boat. Go fast.
And here she says it again.
Quick, get in front. Get in front.
We believe that she was not only participating in the mission, but at times she was actively directing the operation. Again, she's instructing the boat operator to get in front of a rescue ship.
Get in front, Thomas. Get in front. Thomas, go.
No, it's too dangerous. We can't go in front. Get right in front.
They have to stop. We gotta go in front of the boat.
These are examples of manifest observable behavior, actions that a camera and audio recorder can see and hear. Here she is literally detailing her intention to stop this rescue boat.
So this is a boat called the Aquarius that has been illegally bringing in migrants from the Libyan Ocean for the last while. And they're just heading out again to bring in more illegal migrants, and we are going to stop them.
Here she is saying that the NGO vessel will have to stop by law if they're in front of it.
In front of the boat, they have to stop legally.
And here she is saying that the NGO vessel has stopped.
It's stopping, they're slowing down.
So what are these ships doing? Who is Lauren stopping and why is that bad? They are search and rescue ships that save people attempting to cross the oceans to Europe. Do you remember this photo from 2015? It's the image of Alan Kurdi, a child who drowned in the Mediterranean after his family's ship capsized in the ocean. Last year, 5,000 people like that child died in the Mediterranean, and the NGO ships, like the Aquarius,
So this is a boat called the Aquarius.
are a response to the horrific events like the drowning of that child. These are images of Aquarius's search and rescue operation saving people at sea. And you can visit their website to learn more about Aquarius's operation here. And those are the type of search and rescue vessels that Lauren Southern directed that boat operator to obstruct in the clip that you just saw.
You gotta go in front of the boat.
The Defend Europe website now says that they don't intend to obstruct rescue vessels. But if you just watch those videos and Lauren's videos that she posted weeks and months ago, it's clear that they did stop and intended to keep stopping boats like that in the future.
If the politicians won't stop the boats, we'll stop the boats.
In an interview with Big League Politics, she said that she would continue those actions by getting more boats. And the team made good on that promise to get another boat. Lauren and the rest of the Defend Europe team successfully raised funds to buy another boat and continue operating.
The Sea Star is a massive freaking boat. Like, I'm gonna put a picture up here for people to see, but it's definitely an improvement from the little dinghy we were on before.
Our content policy also distinguishes between what we call credible threats and non-credible threats. So when Lauren says,
If the politicians won't stop the boats, we'll stop the boats.
we ask ourselves, is this a credible or a non-credible statement? So let's look at the manifest observable behavior. She and a crew successfully stopped a rescue boat in the Mediterranean.
It's stopping, they're slowing down.
As a part of that mission, she directed the boat operator precisely where to go to stop the vessel.
You gotta go in front of the boat.
She told the press she planned to do it again, and she helped a team successfully raise money to purchase a bigger boat.
And at the end, we said we were going to go out and we were going to do this again. We were going to find a better way to stop these migrant boats and to stop this illegal trafficking. And we've done just that with your help.
And then they purchased a bigger boat. The Trust and Safety team and the Patreon executive team reviewed this overwhelming body of evidence and manifest observable behavior. Our conclusion was that their actions, if they continued to do what they were doing, were likely to inhibit rescue operations and potentially lead to people dying in the oceans. And that's a violation of a section of our content policy that prohibits creators from threatening to take or from taking action that could lead to harm or loss of life. One thing I want to make clear is that if instead of getting in front of the ship, they had just stayed on the side of the ship, that's totally okay. That is free speech. But there's a difference between standing outside of a hospital and holding up a sign and yelling and screaming and exercising your freedom to speak versus standing in front of a hospital door and obstructing people from getting in or out who need to treat someone who's in trouble. Okay. So next is why we removed IGD. This is another clear-cut example of a creator not following content policy. First, they published the doxing of an individual. Doxing is the practice of publishing private information about a person, like their home address or their phone number. This is a behavior that leads to all kinds of awful that I'm not going to get into right now, but doxing is not okay for Patreon creators. Second, they published articles that demonstrated and encouraged pouring concrete over railroad tracks. The article discusses safety precautions, including notifying the train operators, but this is still a dangerous action that could potentially actually lead to people dying. In addition to being dangerous, it's actually a property crime, which is also against our content policy. There are probably going to be a lot of people who say that we're just taking down IGD's page just to seem like we're being politically unbiased and fair, so I want to cut that argument off right here. The Trust and Safety team has a queue of reported pages, and they work through them in an order that they think reflects the urgency of taking down those pages. So we don't batch pages together and take down politically opposing pages at exactly the same time to proactively seem like we're being fair. Removing one particular page a week or two after we remove a different page is just how the team works through the queue. So when we removed Lauren's page, IGD had already come to our attention from a number of inbound reports and was already in our queue. Okay. Moving on. So over the last few days, it's become clear to me that while Patreon performed a thorough and rigorous investigation to make these decisions, we didn't do a good job clearly communicating those decisions to the creator community. I got a handful of emails from creators asking us why we removed Lauren's page, and all we offered was a short statement about loss of life. We didn't properly invest in an external communications plan, so I want to take this opportunity to just apologize for subpar communication with the community. The perfect creator-first company would not have told a creator that there was no chance for appeal or avenue for recourse. I want our creators to trust that we're being meticulous and rigorous when it comes to important decisions. And we can't make a video like this every time, but at the very least, we can open up and be a little transparent about the processes that affect you as a creator on Patreon. So here's what we're going to do about it. We're going to make some commitments right now to the creator and patron communities. We commit to doubling the size of the Trust and Safety team to ensure that we can continue evaluating pages with the right level of detail and rigor, even as Patreon grows. We commit to implementing an appeals process because every creator deserves fair treatment and a second chance. We commit to building a more fleshed out warning system. We commit to continued reform of our process and policy to make sure that it's modern, cutting edge, and keeping up with the speed of culture. We commit to forming a creator council with respected free speech advocates to make sure that our policies are as fair and as unbiased as possible. We commit to improving creator understanding of our guidelines through more transparency and education. We commit to better process for notifying creators of policy warnings and violations. And we commit to better communication with creators in question. Okay, so that's it, everybody. I hope this video helps you understand like why we do what we do and add some transparency to the way we think about these sorts of tough problems. And I think it's good to end just by reiterating how seriously I take and Patreon takes content policy. I am personally a staunch advocate of free speech, and our teams are meticulous in these investigations to make sure that we're being as unbiased and as fair as possible. This never happens on a whim, and it never happens without clear-cut, manifest, observable behavior. And also, most creators don't even have to think about or worry about this. Unless you're gonna go block the doors to a hospital or commit fraud or money laundering, this is just not something that you have to be worried about. This is such an unusual thing, and Patreon is an open platform for all kinds of speech and opinions and ideologies. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later.
All right, folks, that was Jack Conte from Patreon. I'm having problems hitting buttons here today. And I, honestly, all the investigation I've done with him, I trust what he's saying here. Now, I believe he did get a little political in that video talking about the NGO, the non-government organization ships, the rescue ships and stuff, and he was going off what they said on the Aquarius' website and those groups that are rescuing these migrants. I have been reading other accounts where some of these ships, yes, they do rescue some at sea, but when they're not doing that, they smuggle people in. They go and pick people up and bring them over. And clearly, and I know the YouTube community blew up about this, the Patreon community blew up about this, even after he brought these videos out, and even after I was trying to actually, on Lauren Southern's website, I was trying to find them videos on there on YouTube. I don't know if they took them down or what. And I didn't search real hard because I knew that Jack Conte had, and he was sharing the evidence that they used. And she clearly violated the terms of service, okay, and the terms of content on Patreon. And they're a private company, had every right to take those down, just like the IGN takedown. So it's, or IGD, excuse me, IGD, they took down theirs because they were threatening violence, property damage, all that kind of stuff. And folks, I think they're right to do that. Free speech is one thing, but when you're inciting a riot or trying to get people to do property damage, whatever that, you may be crossing a line. Now, some people might disagree with that. Some people will agree with that. I tend to think you're crossing a line there when you're trying to tell people or instruct people how to pour cement on railroad tracks. I don't know in anybody's mind where that gets funny, especially if you don't know what's on that train. What happens if that's a freight train that you poured them tracks on, even though, oh, we're going to warn the railroad operators, you know, that this has happened to slow things down. What happens if that call doesn't get out to the right person? That train hits that and derails, and then what happens if they have a couple tankers of chlorine on that long train? It's called unintended consequences, and you need to really think about those. And I think, and it's hard. Trust me when I tell you, I've been looking at these things and watching, you know, Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Patreon, struggling with all this, especially creators on YouTube struggling with this thing about demonetization and shutting down channels or hiding channels and not giving explanations. And I think, honestly, I think Facebook and YouTube and Twitter could take a page from Patreon and I have no reason to believe he's not going to do this if he implements all the things he was talking about and makes the process better, maybe not perfect, but makes it better for creators to be able to know if I don't think and this is what he was talking about. If you go back, and I'll put the link up to the Rubin Report with his interview over there on the Rubin Report. They're going to have a warning system. You know, look, this goes against our terms of service, and you know they could have like a couple penalty phase. You know, like a 3 strikes you're out or something like that. Like I said, an appeals process so you can redress, you know, whatever it is they're trying to talk about. And again, they don't want to, and they don't want to get drug into the political thing. Although he did poke his nose into politics there, and I think, you know, he maybe shouldn't have done that on this video. But everything I've seen so far, they're trying to be non-biased. You know, they don't want to get into the intentions of the folks. They don't want to stifle freedom of speech. They may disagree with it, and this is how all the platforms should operate. Yeah, you may disagree. The company may disagree with what you're saying, but it's your First Amendment right to say it. And even though, and I've been thinking, folks, I've been racking my brains on that. Even though a corporation owns, and I'm going to pick on YouTube and Facebook and Patreon and Twitter, even though corporations own these, you know, that these are companies that own these, and they have terms of service on there, and if you don't violate the terms of service, there should be no repercussions for what you're saying on there. But on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, especially the big three, it has been proven over, you know, the last year or so, even with Facebook going back a couple of years, that there is a specific bias in the corporation against conservatives. And it's because of the CEOs of the company. They are very liberal. They're very anti-freedom in their ideology, and they don't believe in true free speech. And they want to classify, if you disagree with somebody on a political point or whatever it is, and I'll just make the statement, there are only 2 genders. According to some folks out in social media, that's hate speech. Again, I want them to come tell me how that's hate speech. If I only recognize 2 genders. If you want to recognize 99 genders, go knock yourself out remembering all 99 genders so you're politically correct so you don't offend somebody. I don't do political correctness. I'm a Christian. I know God made man and woman. Are there some abnormalities that happen at birth and stuff where someone's born with both sex organs? Yes, there is. But that's not the norm, folks. And I get tired of people wanting to govern this country on the things that aren't of the norm or the mainstream. You know, I was reading a political cartoon this morning in my email. By all the all the TV shows, the movies, the press, and everything like that, you would think the LGBTQ and Jewish community was running the whole country. And I was reading something about that in this article. I came along with this political cartoon. They were generous in giving the LGBTQ community 4% of the population. Most of the reports I've seen has it down to 3%, but a percentage point one way or the other doesn't matter. And the Jewish folks, Jewish faith in the United States only makes up 2% of the population. Yet, you would think that they're running the whole show. So we're not that we shouldn't be mindful of the minorities in this country. We should not be, and that means we should not take away their freedom and liberty to think and act the way they want, as long as they're not aggressing against somebody else, doing somebody else bodily harm or property damage, okay? And I should be afforded that same right. If I think there's only 2 genders, we should not have a discussion about that. But at the end of the day, honestly, and I'm not going to stonewall you about this, and I'm not being hard-hearted about this, there's only 2 genders. And if you think there's more, then it's my opinion, my bolstered opinion, that there's something mentally wrong with you. And I put that out. Some people would consider that to be hate speech, even though there's nothing hateful about it. I don't want to force you to conform. I'm not saying, well, you have to think like I do, and there's only 2 genders. No, I give people room to grow and put forth arguments and stuff like that. So, if you have an argument to knock me off, my 2 gender, go ahead. But I've never seen one yet. If you take a man and a woman and stand them side by side, the woman's got different plumbing than the man. There's something definitely different about a woman than there is a man. And that gender, she is feminine, I am male, masculine. I went over a show almost over a month ago talking about gender and talking about how in Genesis, in the book of Genesis, it's laid out what these nouns and pronouns are, feminine and masculine, feminine and masculine. There was no transgender pronoun or gender fluid pronoun that was used there. It was male and female. That's it. But again, some people think and would flag me saying, oh, that Dan Clements on the Dan Clements show, he is just a hate monger because of his ideology, which again, I'm not pushing on anybody. I'm just putting it out there. That's what I observe. Very observable that there's a male and female. And what you think in your mind you are is not observable. Now, it may manifest, and I didn't mean to get into this, but this goes along with a lot of stuff that happens in our society today. The only way it manifests that people can see, you might think, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, or I'm a man trapped in a woman's body. On the outside, if you do not take steps to physically alter your appearance, nobody would know any different. It's not until and when you change your appearance and want to start taking medication to change your physiology and maybe go through an operation to change your sex. And again, that's you manifesting that. You didn't physically, when someone looks at you, it depends on the plumbing. And I'm sorry if that offends you. Actually, I'm not sorry that if it offends you. If it offends you, that's on you. I don't do this to be offensive. I do this to state facts. Searchable, observable facts. If you take the natural body, you don't want to see my body natural, folks. Trust me. But if you took my body and my wife's body, again, different plumbing. She's a woman. I'm a man. Enough said about that. I didn't really want to get into that. But anyway, this hate speech thing really bothers me a lot. Because a lot of the anti-freedom folks out there will use that term hate speech. One, they throw that out because they don't have a good argument. And this actually comes out, I was watching the news this morning, this actually comes out of the Marxist, the manifesto, the Communist Manifesto. It comes out of that. If you can't win an argument with facts or putting forth your reasoning and you're not winning the argument, then you start throwing out the names and start making them answer that. And the best way you can answer that is don't answer it. You continue on, and I've done this before. I just continue on in my arguments or my debates on on social media. You know, they start calling me names. The first thing I say, well, I guess I won the argument because you have nothing else to say because you're throwing out these profanities or calling me names and stuff like that. And then I just keep on writing my points down. And I think that frustrates anti-freedom folks more than anything else that I do. And not that I do that to frustrate them. I just do that because I'm not going to let them bait me. I'm not going to let them Kafka trap me. And I'm going to go on with my talking points. And I condemn talking points a lot in the anti-freedom folks. You know, their narratives and their talking points. And I got a paper. I got all this stuff written down, so I don't forget these things. Let me get into this. There's sound bites, talking points, and of the agenda-driven anti-freedom folks out there. It's okay to have talking points. And it's okay to have an agenda as long as it's backed up with facts, and that your end goal is freedom, more freedom and more liberty, or protection of freedom and protection of liberty. If none of that lines up with the protection or advancement of freedom for folks and liberty, then you're on the wrong path. I'm sorry. You're just on the wrong path. And I will point that out. So Jack Conte, I think he was on the wrong path a little bit. He got off into a little bit of politics that there are stories out there. There are some actual researched and some investigative journalists have looked into this, that even some of these rescue ships, these quote-unquote rescue ships, are running refugees out of northern Africa over into Europe, especially into Italy. That's a fact. But I think that's ancillary, or it's another part of the actual story. It's like a rabbit hole that he went off on when it was dealing with Laura Sutherland and IGD and his their company's reasons for taking it down. And to me, she clearly violated it. I hate to say it because I like Laura and Sutherland, but she clearly violated their terms of service, and I wish they would have had something in place. I don't know if they're going to give her a second chance. I think they should, and I think they should get IGB. They should offer them a second chance if they want it, but you know, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen there? I'm not going to show this video because it's like 20 minutes long. I got other stuff I want to get to. But 10th or Tuesday, episode 21, the new DOJ, Department of Justice Asset Forfeiture Scheme and How to Stop It by Mike Maharrey over at blog at 10thamendmentcenter.com. There's a YouTube video link in there for the YouTube video, and it's just a short blurb in there. Let me get over here. A couple of weeks ago, at the behest of Jeff Sessions, the U.S. Department of Justice issued a directive meant to ramp up asset forfeiture across the country, even in states that require criminal convictions first. In this episode of 10th or Tuesday, Michael Bolden and Mike Maharrey talk about asset forfeiture with the directive, what the directive does, and how states can stop it. And again, here is something, the 10th Amendment Center, and especially Michael Bolden. He started this website up, and he's getting quite a big following, trying to put forth the facts of the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which actually states, and I'm going to get out my handy dandy little Constitution here and read this to you. Get over here real quick. The powers of the states and the people ratified 2/15/1791. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And what the 10th Amendment, what that says there, that the states did not enumerate all the powers, everything that the federal government couldn't do. I mean, you would never, the Constitution would be too big, you couldn't read it. So what they did was they enumerated the powers that the states together granted the federal government, that they had authorization from the states to exercise those powers. And in those powers, they are supreme over the states. But it's only those enumerated powers. We talked about this before. And one thing the 10th Amendment Center does is they point out these things, like asset forfeiture at the federal level is unconstitutional because that wasn't a power that was enumerated to the federal government. It just wasn't. And some of these other agencies that are out there, you have to question whether the Constitution authorizes the executive branch, like with the Department of Justice, if the Constitution actually authorizes the president to set up that department. And that's something we need to look into, and we have to ask these questions. So go over there to the DanColumbusShow.com and click on that and watch that video. So he does a very good job on this, and he's not a very, he's not like a huge company that does this. He's, he's mainly by himself, and a couple other people help him. But it was, I thought it was a very good video, and I'm a supporter of the, not financially, but I do support them in spirit and share their articles and stuff of the 10th Amendment Center, because that just warms my constitutional heart to no end. That somebody's out there promoting the 10th Amendment and trying to show the American people how unconstitutional the federal government has actually become. So it does. It just, I got a warm, fuzzy feeling all over from that. This is something I talk about. I haven't talked about it in a long time, the unemployment rate. And I have a CNS News article here. Record 153,513,000 employed in July, 62.9% labor force participation. Now they're touting that as a good thing, but only 62.9% of the available people that can work are actually working. And then they come back and say that our unemployment is actually, where did I see that in here? 4-point-something% that they're reporting today that our unemployment's somewhere just below 5%. Okay, and even that number that they use now, this article, CNS News article by Susan Jones, posted today. She just goes in real quick. I'll read this and I'll get into what I was going to say here. President Trump awakes early on this unemployment report Friday, tweeting about jobs, regulation busting, and consumer confidence, among other things. A few hours later, the Labor Department Bureau of Labor Statistics said the economy added 209,000 jobs in July. The number of employed people jumped by 345,000 people to the 153,513,000 jobs in July, setting a third straight month record. The number of Americans counted as not in the labor force, meaning they don't have a job and are not looking for one, dropped for a third straight month to 94,657,000, and the nation's unemployment rate also dropped 1/10 point to 4.3%. Okay, that's where I'm going to stop reading there, because that's where we end up going off the rails. How in the world do you only have a 4.3% unemployment rate, and you only have the numbers aren't adding up here, in other words, folks, especially the percentages, and you have a 62.9% labor force participation. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds too far. I just want to let you know that the federal government, and this may come to a shock to some folks, the federal government, I'm trying to get over here, doesn't always tell you the truth about things. Dan, say it isn't so. The government lies to us? They would say not. I would say yes and no. Are they using an unemployment standard to figure out what the unemployment rate is? Yes, they are. But they're not using the best one out there, which makes the numbers look better than what they are. Now this goes back, and I've used these numbers in this. I don't know if I've actually used this article, but it reads almost like the article I used years ago by Investopedia, and it might have been because I use Investopedia quite a bit when it comes to stuff like this. This was posted on August 4th of 2015, a couple years ago. Alongside the economic growth rate and the inflation rate, the unemployment rate is one of the most widely reported and discussed economic indicators. It makes regular appearances on newspaper front pages and nightly news broadcasts because it provides a simple snapshot of the condition of the economy. Many assume that the unemployment rate is a straightforward measure of people who are out of work but the reality is more complicated. A little background. And I think this is important for people to understand. That's why I'm reading it. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, is responsible for measuring the nation's unemployment rate by carrying out a monthly survey known as the Current Population Survey. Each month, the BLS contacts 60,000 randomly selected households across the country and records the employment status of each person, 16 years old or older. The collected data is then used to extrapolate a variety of national labor force statistics, including 6 different technical measures of unemployment rate. Now that's important. That's important to remember. There's 6 different measurements or technical measures of unemployment rate. These 6 unemployment rates are labeled U1 through U6, respectively. For the current population survey, an unemployed person is not currently working but is available to work and has actively looked for work at some point during the period prior 4 weeks. The civilian labor force is the sum of all employed and unemployed people. A person who has no job and has not looked for a job in the last 4 weeks is not technically an unemployed person and is not included in the labor force. And see, this is where they go off the rails here. Now, there's housewives that don't work outside the house, and they're not considered part of the labor force, although what they do at home allows their husbands, especially if they're a housewife and they have children, allows their husband to go out and earn a living to support both of them. So, like I said, there's some things that are skewed here, but we'll leave it go with just with the actual labor force. The technical measures of the unemployment rate. The first 2 BLS measures are unemployment of the unemployment rate, U1 and U2, are very narrow. The U3 unemployment rate is the officially recognized rate of unemployment, measuring the number of unemployed people as a percentage of the labor force. Unless otherwise stated, all generic references to the employment rate in government communications in the media refer to the U3 measurement. And this is something presidents, direct their, the BLS to use this one or use that one to make the numbers look better, whatever. And this is something I keep track of myself whenever they put these numbers out, and they seem better and they're really touting them, especially under the Obama administration. One point under the Obama administration, the U6, which is the most comprehensive one, was upwards of 20% or more of unemployment, which that was almost mirroring the unemployment rate during the Great Depression. But they don't want everybody to know about that. And again, a lot of people aren't going to investigate this. A lot of people they trust what the government says. Our government wouldn't lie to us, would they? Dave, our government wouldn't lie to us, would they? Bruce, Darby, Jake, would our government lie to us? Heavens to Betsy. Or heavens to Murgatroyd. U4 unemployment rate is similar to U3 rate, but it adds in a category of people who are technically outside the labor force, known as discouraged workers. Discouraged workers desire to work and have actively looked for work in the past 12 months, but they have not looked in the last 4 weeks because they don't believe there's work available for them due to economic conditions or other reasons. The U5 unemployment rate includes everyone in the U4 rate, in addition to any people who are available to work, willing to work, and not discouraged from looking for work, but who have not looked for work in the prior 4 weeks for some other reason. And the U6 unemployment rate includes everyone in the U5, which includes all of them 1 through 5 now, rate, plus any people who work part-time because full-time work is not available due to economic conditions. Now, that's where the rubber meets the road. There's these people working out there, but they're not fully employed because they're working part-time because they can't find a job in their field or they can't find a full-time position that they can work. And see, the U3 doesn't take that into account. U3 doesn't take anything of the U4, U5 into account. Now, the U6 adds everything together and gives you an honest appraisal. And right now, the U6 is between 8.5% and 9%, almost double the unemployment rate that they're using now with the U3, and which I believe the U6 is a better picture of our unemployment rate because it takes everything into consideration. And this is one thing that I'll continue to push on this show because it's more accurate. It gives people a better picture of the facts. The U3 doesn't. The U3 skimps on a lot of stuff. And politicians use this all the time to tout their success in unemployment. And it amazes me how many people fail to see that it's not the federal government that's doing anything other than, and this is a key point, and Ronald Reagan proved this, deregulation. If the government frees the markets up, makes them freer, and protects their freedoms and liberties, the market's freedoms and liberties, and gets rid of regulation and let the market sort things out, then people have more confidence. And folks, you can extrapolate this out. People have more confidence in the free market than they do in government control of the markets. And it's a real easy test. Every time Ronald Reagan did this, he deregulated the airlines, he deregulated the trucking industry that I was in, and I remember my dad and people of his generation, it's the end of trucking as we know it, this deregulation, because it made it easier for independents to get into the market and actually own their own truck and run freight and everything, and it took the monopoly, the government created monopoly away from huge carriers like National Freight was one of the biggest ones in the country on the East Coast, and took that monopoly away. And my dad was one of them. He said, "Oh, this is going to ruin trucking," and it did nothing of the sort. It actually opened up trucking more to the free markets, and the free markets took care of everything. And yes, at one time there was a glut of drivers on the road, but now there isn't. But that shortage of drivers today is due to regulations. If they would roll back some of these hours of service regulations back to the sensible ones that I worked under, that you drove 10 hours, you took an 8-hour break, and they were trying to push for, and some of these newer truckers may not even know this, they were trying to push for a 24-hour reset clock. If you sat anywhere for 24 hours, it resets your 70-hour clock, which meant what it was, the 70-hour clock is how many hours you can work in an 8-day period. They wanted to restrict that. But a lot of truck drivers, including me, if we got laid over someplace and we got plenty of rest and we're ready to roll, but we were coming up on our 70 hours during the week, we're going to have to slow ourselves down and work less. And so they were trying to put in this rule, come up with this rule, this 24-hour, take 24 hours, whether it's in your sleeper or as long as you're not driving, take the 24 hours off, you reset the 70-hour clock, but you still got to adhere to the 10 and 8 rule. Drive 10 hours, sleep 8 hours. And I did that for Metropolitan because they tracked us with satellite and made us run legal. And if we went over that, we got fired. And it worked out pretty good. I actually made more money running legal than I was illegal. I got more sleep and didn't worry about the police, or the state troopers, or the bears, as it were. Again, government regulations do a lot to diminish what happens in the free market. And this idea of the government running the economy and actually getting numbers from a government agency, you can't help but think there's going to be some bias there, one way or the other. And I think if President Trump, and this is a challenge to President Trump, I don't think he's a listener to the show, maybe he is. This is a challenge to President Trump to start using the actual U6 number, which is more comprehensive and actually gives a clearer picture of unemployment in this country. And yeah, is it a bad number? Yeah, it's a bad number. But let's deal with that. Why is it a bad number? And that's why we have to dig into it and ask why it's a bad number. And this is something I ask people to do all the time. Why are things the way they are? Or why do you think your opinions should be forced on people and my opinions should be oppressed? Or why do you think your way with health care is better than my way with health care? And we should be able to sit down and discuss these things. I'm more than willing to sit down and discuss these things from a constitutional Christian standpoint. But a lot of people don't want to do that. That's why I'm a little disappointed in Ben Shapiro debating Cenk Unger and didn't even bring up the constitutional sides of government. Because I know Cenk wouldn't have had an answer for that, and I think Ben Shapiro could have crushed him even more. I'm just saying, folks. Oh my, coffee tastes good this morning. Whew. I went to swim this morning, and today was the first day this week where it actually felt like a bathtub, because the water walkers, folks like me that take aquatherapy, we come in after the folks that start at 5 o'clock in the morning. Our local Y opens at 5 and has lap swimming till 8. And I've come in at 7:30 every day I go in there. and never seen a lap swimmer in there. But the lap swimmers like the water cold. If it's too hot, then they start to sweat and everything like that. They just don't want that. So they got to do a balance. But today, evidently, I asked the lifeguard and said they only had 1 or 2 lap swimmers out early, so they hit the thermostat on it, and the water was great this morning. I got a good workout on the water, and it is, I'm telling you what, folks, it's kicking my hiney. That aqua therapy and that, and I haven't even got with the instructor on specific exercises for fibromyalgia. I'm just out there walking back and forth in the water and swimming a couple laps and doing some other stuff in the water, treading water for a little bit on the deep end. And folks, this isn't even caffeinated coffee. I still like it. I just like taste of coffee. It's a good smooth cup of coffee. All right, we got about half an hour left. I just heard the alarm off on there. Yep, we got just about 30 minutes left here. Well, let's keep going in here. Let's see where I want to go to next. Well, let's get this one out of the way because I have an email about this, and I read this email, and if you lie to people's face, even in an email, and it's only a small section of this email that I'll get into here before I read the actual email, can you believe anything else that they put out in an email? I mean, this is a bald-faced lie that they're putting in their email. This is from Common Cause, holding power accountable, right? About halfway down this email, I tried to copy this off and put it on a Word document, but I couldn't do it. But I do have a couple articles here about what they're saying here with Common Cause. But halfway down this email, they said, we don't have big corporate donors. Everything we do to protect voters' rights depends on regular folks like you stepping up. Please support our work with a contribution today. Now, that's only a half-truth there, folks. I don't think, and I did some research a few weeks back, maybe a month ago, and I didn't see any corporate donors, although I didn't get the full report on their donors. I do know that they list open societies on their donor page. And even though George Soros is not a corporation in and of himself, he has a lot of money invested in a lot of places, and he donates a lot of money to Open Society to try to push an anti-freedom agenda. And he is one of the biggest donors. Open Society is one of the biggest donors to groups like this. So they may not have big corporate donors, and they're saying big corporate donors. I believe they have some small ones there, but it's not all about support from individuals, regular folks like you and me, because George Soros foots a lot of the bill through Open Society for a lot of these organizations that pop up like that support his ideology. Anyway, got this email. It said, friend, I'm rushing you this update on our lawsuit against Donald Trump and Chris Kobosh, Voter Suppression Commission, because we urgently need your support. Now, they automatically go to, with the name, with the names. It's just, I want to get over here to this. Voting Commission, and it's not a Voting Suppression Commission, it's a voting commission. But listen as they go down through, and if people, again, folks that don't want to do their own research, that want to just blindly trust these sites because they live inside this narrative bubble and they're comfortable in there, and all the end goals and everything they talk about is inside this narrative bubble, which we need to pop, by the way. They don't do any research on their own, so they get an email like this and everything looks good. Yeah, what they're saying, we don't have these big corporate donors and that, but they don't. I've never seen them say that George Soros is one of our main donors. Never seen him say that. Anyway, it's actually just the voter commission. Yesterday was our first day in court, and this was actually posted on the 2nd. So the first was August 1st was their first day in court. Common Cause versus Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. Our case has the potential to permanently end notorious voter suppressor Chris Kobosh illegal attempts to gather data that states have about every voter in the country, because we have the facts and the law is on our side. And this is what they say early on in their email. We're suing under the Privacy Act, which prevents the White House and other agencies from maintaining or disseminating private data on citizens' First Amendment protected activities. It was passed after President Nixon's White House secretly compiled an enemies list of its political opponents for retaliation and is still perhaps especially relevant today. I don't know how it's relevant with this case, and I think the judge is going to actually, when I get over these other articles, the judge is going to talk about this. I'll start with the bad news. Our emergency motion to stop Kobach data collection was denied, but the case is still moving forward, and we still have a shot at victory if we keep up the fight. That's why I'm asking for your support to help us see this case through to stop President Trump and his cronies from intimidating voters. After yesterday's history, the big milestone is whether we get a preliminary injunction that would immediately stop the commission from collecting voter data while our case is argued, which would be a major win. And they go on down talking about that. So that's the email. And I get these, I'm on their email list, so I can keep track of what they're doing. And I'm called a troll for that. And then I want to keep track of these people. Dave put a good comment in the YouTube comments. Half truth plus half lie equals one lie. Yep. And if you guys want to know what the definition of an excuse is, it's truth wrapped up in a lie. That's what an excuse is. Anyway, I have this, and I've corroborated this. I don't normally use the Washington Post as a source, but I've seen other articles, and they're all worded about the same, so I'll give them a shot on this one. U.S. judge denies common cause effort to block Trump voter commission by Spencer S. And I don't know how you pronounce this, HSU. Hugh? Or Hugh? Get that S in there? I'm sorry, I don't mean to make fun of his name. Some of these names I get very, very hard. And this was posted on the August 1st of this year. A federal judge on Tuesday declined to temporarily bar President Trump's voting commission from collecting data from states and the district, saying a federal appeals court likely will be deciding the legality of the request. U.S. District Judge Royce C. Lamberth of the district denied an emergency motion by Common Cause, a nonprofit government watchdog group. The group alleged the request for voting history and political party affiliation by the Trump administration violates a Watergate-era law that prohibits the government from gathering information about how Americans exercise their First Amendment rights. Lamberth advised the group to flesh out its claims by documenting the commission's activity at a recent July 19th meeting while the lawsuit continues. I'm just a way station to an appeals judge who will get to decide the matter, Lambert said, urging the parties to build a fuller record for higher courts. The decision came in the latest attempt by the opponents to block the commission's request for voting information from more than 150 million registered voters. Commission officials have said 30 states have agreed to share at least some data, adding that it requested only publicly available data and would anonymize any information it released. Now, I want to stop the reading there. If you go look at the executive order that set up this commission, they say in the executive orders that they must abide by state laws. Okay? They must abide by state laws that are on the books. But this is publicly obtainable information. That means I can make the request of our state government here in Pennsylvania to request this information, and they're supposed to grant it to me. They're supposed to, because it's publicly available. Maybe they have a database out there, and I was going to work on that over the weekend just to put my nose in or see if they had a public database that you can access. I don't know if they do or not, but anyway. Trump formed the Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity in May after repeatedly suggesting that millions of illegal votes cost him the popular vote against Democrat presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. Studies and state officials of both major parties have found no evidence of widespread voter fraud. And again, I'm trying to give Washington Post the benefit of the doubt. I just want to point this out. I've been pointing out on a weekly basis different voter fraud that's actually been found, that has been physically found of voter fraud. And the last case was where they're duplicate voting, where people are voting and the same person is voting in two different states. That's voter fraud. That's illegal. Now, they may want to come in and redefine what the definition of is, you know, and that goes back to Bill Clinton reference. A lot of people I talk to, they're getting into what the definition of fraud is. They're trying to change that definition of fraud. That's not going to work with me, and I don't think it's going to work with most right-thinking Americans. All right, some state leaders expressed objections, saying the effort could reveal personal information, suppress voter participation, and encroach on states' oversight of voting laws. Privacy experts warned registered voters would face increased risk, potentially identifying home addresses of military families, partial Social Security numbers used as passwords, or commercial services and individuals' felony records. Another federal judge, and let me back up here just a second. A lot of states, if you've been convicted and served time for a felony, you don't get to vote anymore. And Common Cause and Indivisible Group is actually pushing in Florida for them to repeal that law. Oh, you're disenfranchising. It's like over a million people in Florida that are convicted felons that serve time that can't vote because they have a felony on their record. Well, they served their time. They paid their debt to society. Well, maybe according to the letter of the law they had, but a lot of times, what about the victims? Can they bring that, if they're convicted murder or manslaughter or whatever, something like that, or violent crime, they raped a girl or a boy or something like that. Can they give back what they stole from the victims? And so in my opinion, if you committed a felony and you serve time for that, you forfeit certain rights as a citizen. You shouldn't have committed a crime to begin with. I'm sorry. And you know what? And here's a Christian principle a lot of people don't want to agree to. And I have Christian brothers and sisters in Christ that have had problems with drugs and alcohol, addicted to pornography, all this kind of stuff. And sometimes they get physical consequences with these addictions, especially with drugs and alcohol. They came to Christ. They were forgiven of their sins. Their sins were washed away like they never happened. But guess what? Sometimes these folks, I got a good friend that was an alcoholic, hadn't been an alcoholic for years, but he damaged his liver. So that's a consequence he's going to have to live with the rest of his life. And there's not a whole lot they can do about it. They might be able to, if it gets bad enough, they might do a liver transplant. But in the end, folks, there's consequences that folks live with the rest of their lives because of actions and decisions they made. And in my honest opinion, and I would feel the same if I was a convicted felon. I broke the law, I did wrong, I served my time, but I can't vote. And I'm not a convicted felon, and people say, well, you don't know how you would act. Well, hopefully I would still act within my principles and character. Hopefully my principles and character will keep me from becoming a felon to begin with. And that's what I'm saying. I don't want to belabor that too much, but that's what they're pushing for in Florida, some of these George Soros-backed groups, to get these convicted felons, back on the voter rolls. After a federal judge in Washington, D.C., U.S. District Court Colleen Kohler-Cotley last month ruled the commission is a White House advisory panel and so exempt from requirements to conduct a privacy impact review before it gathers the data. That decision has been appealed. Common Cause argued the commission's request is substantially unlawful, not merely procedurally flawed. The suit alleges the commission, led by Vice President Pence, with Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobosh, Republican, as vice chairman, recently described new actions that make it federal agency under the law. Kobosh, for example, at a July 19 meeting, compared the commission's work to an interstate voter registration cross-check program under which 30 states pool data to identify, purge, and potentially prosecute voters registered in two states. Common Cause lawsuit claims Kobosh also directed staff to collect whatever data there is within the federal government that might be helpful to the investigation, including information kept by the Departments of Justice, Homeland Security, and the U.S. Census Bureau. Now, these anti-freedom groups out there, bringing these lawsuits trying to stop these people from doing this, But where are they on this Russian collusion fabricated fake story on former FBI Director Mueller's? It's turning into a witch hunt, folks. He just impaneled, yesterday and today, just impaneled a grand jury to seek indictments. And again, I caution you, a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich for just being a ham sandwich, or the example I was actually given was a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich for having mustard on it instead of mayonnaise. And that's how broad a scope a grand jury has. So I not that I don't put any faith in grand juries, but you know that's not a trial. Just because someone gets indicted doesn't mean they're guilty. It just means that they think there's enough evidence to take it to trial and then weigh that evidence in a court of law. And again, this common cause, they fall flat on their face because the law just is not on their side. And they don't realize it. And if you ever, and I don't suggest that you do, I do because I do it for the show. I follow these groups on Twitter and Facebook, and some of just the nonsense that they put out. It is all PC garbage that they put out, that they're virtue signaling. Look what we're doing. And the problem with it, and I wonder why there's a lot of folks out in Colorado that are deregistering to vote, and other states they're actually wanting to be taken off the voter rolls because they don't want the federal government looking into it. And you know, if that's what they want to do, they have the freedom and liberty to do that. And quite honestly, I hate this argument. I don't have nothing to hide, so they can investigate me. No, I knew I knew going in as a voter that whatever information I put down on my registration form was public domain. Because I'm sorry, it just is. It's public information that you can get. I knew that going in. And if you don't know that going in, then it's on you, not me. And it's on you, not the President's Commission on Voter Fraud. That's on you. You have to know these things. And if you don't, too bad. You should have known. You should have known before you got into some contract like that. I do have, where's that other one? Oh, there is another story that and like I said, I just want to show you that it actually, I do some extra research to confirm. This is by Liz over at BuzzJor.com. I've seen them before, and they do a pretty good job. They go and comment and look at these stories and do some research. Another judge denies block on Trump voter fraud commission, and I just told you that there was 2 different judges deciding on this, and they're not allowing the injunction to go through because they haven't explained well enough to the judges. I should have highlighted this, but I didn't. Well, anyway, I'll just read a little bit of this. Another federal judge has turned down a request to prevent Donald Trump's voter fraud commission from going forward with plans to collect information of about 200 million American voters. After an hour-long hearing Tuesday, U.S. District Court Judge Royce Lamberth denied the watchdog group's Common Cause motion for a temporary restraining order focused on data requests the panel's vice chair, Chris Kobosh, have issued to all 50 states. The request seeking publicly available voter information, including dates of birth, partial Social Security numbers, and criminal conviction details, led some state election officials to say they didn't plan to comply or would limit the information they would share. Civil rights groups also complained that the entire effort was aimed at disenfranchising minority voters. Now, that's, again, these Let America Vote, Common Cause, individual group, they put these fancy things out. Oh, these things are just aimed, like voter ID, it's aimed at disenfranchising minority voters. And there was the best case I can cite was down in North Carolina, where the judge got tired of the arguments, told the one side that was claiming that voter ID suppressed people who wanted to vote but couldn't get an ID, challenged them to find somebody that didn't have an ID that wanted to vote. They found one elderly woman, and the only reason why she didn't have a voter ID because she didn't drive anymore, or ID at all, she didn't drive anymore, and that she would vote, but she didn't know where to get a new ID. She wanted to vote, didn't know where to get it, so it actually helped them. You know, they were good Samaritans while they were doing this research, and they helped her get an ID. But they couldn't find anybody that was disenfranchised or suppressed. You know, because of voter ID law in Indiana, which this is where the lamestream media falls down, and other folks fall down on this whole story about voter ID. In Indiana, the voter registrations actually went up after they implemented their voter ID, and the main reason, according to a news story I heard years ago on this, was that folks, it didn't matter what color they were or race or whatever, folks felt disenfranchised before because they couldn't be sure of the vote, and they felt, well, if someone illegally votes, that just cancels out my vote, so what's the sense of me voting? And when they got this in, people were more confident in the security of the vote, and the voter registration actually went up, and that was the reason they cited. But you didn't hear the lamestream media talking about that. And so these groups are very good about couching these things. You know, well, this commission is just disenfranchising minority voters. You know, they're playing the race card. Let's just put it out there. They're playing the race card because they have no other arguments. And this is, you know, this is one of Dan's, you know, one of Dan's rules for interpreting anti-freedom groups. If you don't see any facts coming out, and all of a sudden you see these things like disenfranchising minority voters, or they call you Islamophobic or homophobic or racist or misogynist, whatever. This is how you should interpret that. I am done. I have no more ammunition in my arsenal to debate this point. I have no more points to try to persuade you. Therefore, I need to switch to calling you names to try to suppress your ideas. Just remember, they have no more ammo. They have no more arrows in their quiver to shoot at you when they start putting names out there. And I want to read down through just a little bit more. Lamberth didn't explain in detail why he was denying the restraining order, but he said the request fell short on the record before me. He also seemed irked the lawyer seeking the order had not provided the court with a full transcript of the panel's July 19th meeting at which Kobach talked about seeking the data from the states and cross-checking it with federal agencies. The lawyers representing Common Cause, Josephine Morse of Democracy Forward, urged that Kobach's statements at the meeting and in media interviews made clear he intends to involve federal agencies such as Social Security Administration and Department of Homeland Security in trying to find voters who aren't eligible to vote. Well, how else would you find them? Especially illegal immigrants that seem to be voting in numbers that people are actually suspecting because of this automatic voter law where you get your driver's license, you register to vote at the same time. Well, what happens if they fraudulently obtained a driver's license and then they register for them to vote? They got a driver's license, they register them to vote, and it was a fraud to begin with. They never talk about stuff like that. People like me keep bringing these stuff up, and they don't have an answer for that. Okay? However, Lamberth said he wouldn't rely on attorneys' assertions about what Kobach had said there or in media interviews. I don't use internet, I love this, I don't use internet evidence like videos as court evidence, said Lamberth, an appointee of President Ronald Reagan. I don't take judicial notice of TV interviews. I don't take judicial notice of news articles and all that junk. There's my kind of man. Ronaldus Magnus appointed him. So I love it. I love it. You know, and he wasn't going to bend to this hype. And this is, folks, and this, I thought this was kind of funny because here we have lawyers. Josephine Morse from Democracy Forward, a very anti-freedom group out there. Supposedly a lawyer trying to introduce or use evidence that I think any paralegal would know that a court is not going to use because it's all circumstantial. But that's all they got. That's all they got. I'm really interested in what's going to happen with this lawsuit. I think it's going to be shot down. I mean, I think it's going to go down in flames so bad that they won't know what hit them. Of course, they won't realize it. Anti-freedom groups never realize that they lost. They keep moving forward, and they keep using the same tactics that they lost with before. Not only is it fodder for shows like mine, it makes me wonder how these folks were educated. Or were they even educated? Or were they simply indoctrinated? And when you're indoctrinated, I think of these troops over in these communist countries like China. They're not educated. They're indoctrinated to follow their leader. And that's it. You know, they're raised from a young age to follow their leader. And if their leader wasn't scared of the truth and information, they wouldn't be forcing Apple. If Apple wants to sell in China, if I was Apple, I know it's a big market, but you know, Apple's actually kowtowing to them that they're removing apps from the App Store in China that allow people to use virtual private networks that you can't be traced on the internet. And Russia's doing the same thing. They want to get rid of VPNs. And I tell my anti-freedom friends on the gaming community on YouTube and technical communities on YouTube that net neutrality, you look to Russia and China, there's your future net neutrality. You get somebody in office, again like Barack Obama, that has the levers of power over the internet and doesn't like some things, they could literally have the FCC shut down VPNs in the United States. They could literally have that done. I don't know how successful they'd be, but I mean they could try to get that done. And so I'm like anti-government control over the internet. You know, leave me out of it. I don't want it. You know, and I'll fight. I'll actually fight you. I'll fight you for it. Oh yes, we got a few minutes left. I want to get to a couple more here. Tucker Carlson calls out Democrat strategists. Your party's better deal, just a ripoff of Trump's 2016 election platform. And this is funny, and this is what they're going with. Democrats are in dire need of a new message because the new slogan they just rolled out sure sounds like a ripoff of President Trump's 2016 platform of Make America Great Again. The Democrats' cheery new slogan, a better deal, appropriates the slogan of pizza chain Papa John. We're a better deal. You got the new deal. I thought the better deal was when LBJ instituted a bunch of socialist things. The New Deal was under FDR. The New Deal was under LBJ. So this should be the new deal. Now they're calling it the better deal. They could call it the new and improved deal, or they could call it the raw deal, which would actually make more sense with the Democrat Party. This could be the raw deal. But I guess Tucker Carlson had some fun with this. This is an article by BizPac Review by Samantha Chang posted today. I thought this was funny. I just wanted to share that with you there. We have some other breaking news. Newly obtained Uba Abedin emails boost evidence for Hillary pay-to-play scandal by Jack Crowell at BizPac Review, Hat Tip Daily Caller. Former Hillary Clinton aide Huma Ubedin used her personal email account to transmit classified documents and coordinate favors for Clinton donors, according to emails obtained by Judicial Watch Wednesday. Judicial Watch obtained the documents as part of a lawsuit filed after the State Department failed to respond to a March 2015 Freedom of Information Act request. The newly obtained documents include 91 Clinton email exchanges that were not turned over to the State Department, contradicting Clinton's claim that as far as she knew, she had turned over all of her government emails. So this is an ongoing thing. And folks, we knew if they dug deep enough that they're going to find these things. They're reporting on TV, One American News Network and RT America. We're reporting some of the hard drives that the FBI has recovered. They actually got some data off of those. And so that was... And the thing is, they're still walking around free. They're still walking around free. I shake my head and I don't get it. The final thing I want to end on, I always try to end on a really high note on Fridays at Free For All Friday. And you might have heard this in the news. 11-year-old impresses Trump with a letter on work ethic. Let me mow White House lawn. I will do this at no charge. Who can turn down free stuff, right? And honestly, I think it's more for the honor of mowing it than it is about the money. This is by Frida Powers. posted yesterday on BizPack Review. In a letter to President Trump, a lawn care business owner offered to mow the White House lawn at no charge. The business owner is 11 years old. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders read a letter from Frank at Wednesday's press briefing saying the young boy embodies the enterprising and ambitious spirit of America. And it goes on down through there, right? And it talks about how he would do that. They're going to let him mow some, and I don't think they're going to let most of it. But I want to get down to this one part before the end of the show. The letter from the 9-year-old nicknamed Pickle, who said Trump was his favorite president, sparked a meltdown on social media and from the mainstream press, which wondered if he actually existed. Washington Post tracked down Dylan to prove he really wrote the letter. So they were spewing accusations that this was fake without even going out and investigating it. The lamestream media, man, you gotta love them, right? You really, really gotta love them. Oh, man. Well, folks, that hour and a half went by fast. It really, really did. But anyway, that's the end of the show. You hear the music going on there. Hope you had a good week this week on the Dan Clement Show. Hopefully I've been entertaining a little bit, informative a lot, and hopefully challenged your narrative in your life. This has been the Dan Clement Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your Constitution warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless. And remember, on Sunday, attend the church of God's choice, not yours choice. We'll see you at Monday at noon, folks.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.